thereon except as permitted by paragraph 17 below. I was going to go to 17 to read that. Here, 17. Tracts, and there's several numbers, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, and 75, may be further subdivided into smaller tracts, provided that each re-subdivided tract shall contain an area of not less than 1 acre, and each such owner shall be a member of the association as herein above provided. Tract 76 may be further subdivided into smaller tracts, etc. Now, tracts 71, 2, 3, 4, and 5, together with tracts A-1 through A-8, may be fenced on their boundaries, provided the fence meets other provisions herein, and horses and cows may be kept on these tracts, provided they are kept for the owner's use. Stables or barns may be constructed on these tracts, provided they meet the requirements herein above. So it specifies horses and cows, no other animals, and it says they can be fenced, and they can have barns, and provided they meet the requirements for structures, and they can be subdivided with certain restrictions. That's paragraph 17. So when it says except as paragraph 17, that's what it's saying. Okay. Paragraph 17 doesn't say anything about any other kind of animal, and it doesn't say anything other than horses and cows, subdivision, fences, and stables and barns, provided the stables and barns meet the other structure requirements. Okay?
For the owner's use.
And it's for the owner's use. It's not for commercial
Purposes.
You can't rent out the horses for riding. You can't be selling the animals, the cows and milk or meat, whatever. That's not what's allowed for owner's use. Okay? All right. Now back to paragraph 2. None of the tracts or improvements erected thereon, except as permitted by paragraph 17 below, shall be used for anything other than private residential purposes, and shall not be used for any commercial purposes, except that private residences may be rented or leased to single families from time to time as the owner may determine, and professional services of a purely personal nature may be rendered which do not attribute to the property any appearance of commercial use thereof. Okay?
That last part I think is problematic.
Okay, so that probably is. What constitutes appearance of commercial use? If you're sitting in your house and doing bookkeeping, that one could argue that was personal, but it certainly doesn't have anything to do with the appearance of the house, and I think we all see that as acceptable. Other things where there's no appearance of the property and there's no coming and going of large numbers of people, you know, personal use could be massage services, I suppose. Personal nature. Do we have any comments on this?
Well, as long as there's not signage, I mean, that was a discussion at one time. If there's no signage, well, that would be making it the appearance. So if there's no signs or,
right,
you know, I sell potatoes by the sack here or whatever. You know.
Right. Okay, signage comes under a different paragraph.
Right.
Okay, so that's not involved.
So when they said appearance, that's what I was
Right.
just saying, you know, about that.
Which do not attribute to the property any appearance of a commercial use thereof.
There's like if you have a little stand or something in front of your property, that would.
Well, yeah, one could argue storage of, commercial inventory, things like that.
Yeah. Here we go.
Things being grown, raised for commercial purposes.
Okay. So what do we want to say here?
Well, again, we're giving direction to the attorney. We don't
That's right.
necessarily have to
These are
draft
notes
it
to the
perfectly
attorney.
or whatever.
We're not going to rewrite it.
Right.
We're going to ask the attorney to tell us how should this be written to accomplish what we want to accomplish.
So we
Or does it need to be changed?
Or so do we want to put like where it says shall be rented or leased from time to time as the owner may determine?
What?
What's wrong with that?
Yeah, we need to
That
allow
would-
people to
that
rent out their
wouldn't-
property.
Huh?
Don't we need to allow
Yeah, I
people
mean,
to rent out their property?
Yeah, but I mean, what is time to time?
Anytime they want to.
Okay, so like they buy the property and they buy it for the purpose of renting it?
Yeah, it's allowed.
I think when we come down to the commercial use, when there's no question about it that we have a unit that's being used to store for commercial use.
Yeah, but the question then is, if that unit looks commercial, and has, then that's one thing. If it is, if it is a unit,
Warehouse or whatever.
I mean, for instance, if someone builds a shed on their property and it gets board approval, and they're storing their inventory in there, whatever they might sell,
They're Amway.
widgets. What's that?
They're Amway.
Yeah.
I'm just-
Well, sure, they're Amway. And they're not selling, people they aren't conducting business there. That's a business they conduct when they go on the road or whatever. Then as long as that storage meets it and it doesn't have an Amway sign on the side of the wall or anything, then my position would be that doesn't create a commercial appearance.
Correct.
So,
But if there are things, right, growing, animals being raised, things that are out in the open,
right.
a warehousey type thing that's being built that doesn't meet the restrictions that are being used for commercial purposes, but that really probably goes under another one. I do want to come back to when we finish that point. I think Juanita's question about time to time, I do have a concern there.
What are your concerns?
Concern is this, that now with VRBO and websites like that, people can start running their house as a rental, but on a daily or weekly basis. And I've got a friend who in fact has a property out near Lakey, and she plans on turning her house to be listed on VRBO vacations in a rental by owner.
Yeah.
And it means then there'll be all kinds of strangers churning through potentially on a daily or weekly basis. And as she mentioned, she already had her place rented out to someone who's going to use it for honeymoon. Now, I'm just going to pose the question.
Like hunters, for example, if somebody want to rent their, hunt season all year round here, every weekend it could be rented to different hunters.
See, a rental with a 6-month or 1-year lease is very different than all manner of
For a weekend.
people coming in for a week or weekend, right, or a month or
What about
2 days or
what
something.
about French bed and breakfast?
See, that's what I'm saying. I mean, are we addressing that? Because that's time to time, and that's
It is.
yeah.
Do we have a problem with that?
I think some people do.
Okay.
No, don't really know what. I mean,
Because it's become a business. It's become a hotel, basically. And in fact, hotels are fighting really hard because these people aren't paying taxes in the same. They don't have the same regulations that hotels and motels are. Now, that's not our fight. I mean, but I'm just saying this is churning an illegal issue in numbers of ways.
Well, so what's
And neighbors who don't like their next door neighbor's house being rented out, and there's constantly people around that they don't know in city neighborhoods and all over the place.
Noise.
And they didn't buy their house thinking that the next door neighbor was suddenly going to become a business motel.
Okay, so what's the view here? I mean, it seems to me the way to do that would be to require that rentals have a certain minimum length period of time or something. The lawyer may have another point of view.
Or do we want to leave it just that the board needs to be notified that a property is going to be listed as available to the public for
Wouldn't
periods
that
of
be
time?
commercial use?
See, I think it is, and that's
Okay,
so. If it starts popping up on, and there's other websites, but VRB is the one that I'm more familiar with. Yeah.
But I know that that also raises questions about the security.
Right. This is what I'm saying, is we now have a whole bunch of people coming through that we don't know who they are, and
Okay.
there could be fine folk on vacation. It's just we've now got technology has allowed for, this is why these things have to get rewritten as we have a new issue.
okay, so let me, we've got two things it seems to me that we have to address here. One of them is, the principally one thing. Do we want to allow basically overnight type rentals to be on the ranch? At the present, it seems to me that it's allowed. There's nothing.
But let me take it.
That's a major policy issue. Getting it written legally is not going to be that tough.
Let me take it another step further. We were talking earlier about a commercial enterprise. Does that constitute commercial enterprise?
It's the same paragraph.
Okay, so that would be the question. You've got question of, on one hand, leasing and renting versus the address of.
Using the whole property as a commercial enterprise.
Exactly.
But if you allow it to be rented for a year,
That's different, in my opinion.
then allowing it to be rented for a weekend.
Yeah.
Well, like when Fred had house built, was that his intent the whole time to do that? And did he-
How did the board? Fred came up with the
Board
idea
or
somewhere
anything?
along the way, but
And
Well, my understanding was he was gonna live there.
That's what he
But
said.
then
when he was
again-
building.
yeah.
He's gonna build up there now, so this
Well-
probably counts on doing the same thing here that he's been doing.
I have to say, that becomes the use of the property as a commercial enterprise, but on the other hand, how do we distinguish? So the question is, how do we distinguish a long-term rental as commercial versus a short-term rental as commercial?
Well, it seems to me a long-term rental, there's now a resident on the property. A short-term rental is a motel. This is now just transient people coming through that are not residents, that are not anchored to the property in any way.
My suggestion would be that an attorney would probably be able to address that.
Well, that's what we're doing, is
That's
we're
what
writing notes. I think here we ask questions of the attorney, we don't.
I don't think we have to draft it.
And
Oh, we're not trying to draft it. He just wants to know what is it you
Yeah.
want to change, what do you want to add, what do you want to delete. And then his
Let
job
me
is
read you
to
what I
write the
wrote.
legal language.
does storage of commercial material outside constitute commercial appearance? That's the first question. And I think the answer, the response he'll say is, what do you mean by storage? And that's a discussion we need to have. Raising animals, question mark. Okay. Then in this separate sort of note, what does time to time constitute? VRBO, rentals for short stays, question mark. That is a commercial enterprise, period. How do we distinguish long-term rental versus short-term?
As a time frame or?
As a commercial enterprise. Yeah, and I think the answer, we certainly can distinguish it in time frame, but the question is that we can require that every rental submit the name of the person, their permanent mailing address, which presumably would be here if they're long-term rental. And, but not necessarily. Somebody could live here long-term and have a permanent mailing address, a P.O. box in the back. Imagine everything. And we could suggest that, and a telephone number for them where they can be reached while they're on the land. That would certainly give us information about each and every one. And I think we should. It's a matter of security. We need to know who is living right beyond here, who's renting and staying in the room. Now, not overnight guests, obviously, but we're talking about the resident who's at home. Anyhow, I think the lawyer needs to tell us stuff here.
I just wanted to pose it as something to consider because I think it's only going to start happening more and more because
I
that's what
didn't
people
think
are
of
doing.
it. I don't want to see, I don't want this to be content.
Exactly.